It had been a long-awaited escape. My husband, Adam, and I had been saving up for years to buy our vacation home, a place where we could get away from the stress of city life and unwind. It was a modest little house by the lake, tucked away from the noise, surrounded by nature. We had worked hard to make it perfect, a sanctuary where we could recharge whenever we needed to. We hadn't even had the chance to settle in fully when everything started to go wrong. It was supposed to be our personal retreat, a place for peace and privacy, but it seemed that everyone else had different plans. It was a bright Saturday morning when I first noticed the signs. I'd driven up to the house alone, wanting to spend the weekend there and catch up on some reading. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The front door was slightly ajar, which wasn't right. Adam and I had locked up when we left last time. I walked inside cautiously, half expecting to see a broken window or a stray animal that had gotten in. But when I stepped inside, I was hit with an overwhelming feeling of confusion and frustration. The lights were on. The TV was blaring from the living room, and I could hear the sounds of children playing in the other room. I froze in the doorway. It was my sister-in-law, Julia, and her family. I was stunned. "Monica, you're here." Julia's voice rang out. Too casual, as if there was no issue at all. She appeared from the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee. "We've been using the house for a little while. Thought you wouldn't mind." "What do you mean using the house?" I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. "Well, it's so peaceful here. We've been here for a few days now, and it's been amazing. The kids love it." She smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stood there in shock. My vacation home, our vacation home, had become her family's new base. I could barely comprehend it. "Julia, this is my house. You can't just," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, come on. Don't be like that," she interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "You know how hard it is for us to find a peaceful place, and this is just perfect. Plus, we're family, right?" "Family," I could feel my temper rising. "No, Julia. This isn't a vacation home for anyone else but Adam and me. I haven't even had a chance to fully enjoy it, and you've just moved in like you own the place." Her response was a nonchalant shrug. "Well, we thought you'd want us to be here. Mom and Dad said it was fine." "Mom and Dad?" My head was spinning. "What did they say?" "They said that family should share. You're always so busy with work and everything. They thought it'd be fine if we stayed here for a while." I couldn't believe it. My in-laws had sided with Julia? I felt betrayed, but more than that, I felt used. The idea that our family thought they could just invade my space, my sanctuary, was infuriating. "I didn't say it was fine," I said through gritted teeth. "You need to leave." Julia just laughed, completely unfazed. "Don't be like that, Monica. We're not here forever. Just a little longer. You'll see. We're not hurting anyone." I had no idea how to respond to that. My frustration was mounting, but I didn't want to cause a scene in my own house. Instead, I turned and left, slamming the door behind me. As I sat in my car, I could feel the weight of everything settling on me. This wasn't just an intrusion, it was a violation. Julia wasn't just staying in my house, she was treating it like her own. And my in-laws, who were supposed to be supporting us, had given her the green light. I felt the sharp sting of betrayal, and for the first time, I wondered just how deep the manipulation ran. A week passed and I avoided her calls and texts, wanting some space to process what had happened. I didn't want to involve Adam yet. I needed to figure out how to handle this on my own first. But I was already starting to feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Then the bills came. It started with the electricity bill. It was double what it usually was. Then the water bill came, and it was higher as well. I knew something was off. I pulled out the old bills to compare them and confirmed my suspicions. The house was being used far more than it ever should have been. And that meant the utilities were being run constantly. I called Adam, my voice tight with anger. Adam, you need to take a look at this, I said, handing him the pile of bills when he got home. Julia's family has been using the vacation house for the past week. And the bills are through the roof. We need to talk to her. Adam looked at the numbers, his brow furrowing. This doesn't make sense. We're hardly ever there, and these bills are outrageous. I know. And Julia isn't even paying for it. My voice was shaking now. She's been living here without asking. Without even telling me. And now she's running up the utilities like she owns the place. Adam sighed and rubbed his face. I'll call her. We need to figure out what's going on. He called Julia, but when she picked up, it was clear she wasn't going to take responsibility for anything. Julia, we're seeing a spike in the utilities, Adam said, trying to keep his tone calm. What's going on? Oh, the kids and I have been running around all day, and we've been cooking more meals. You should expect the bills to be a bit higher, but don't worry, we're taking care of everything. Taking care of everything? Adam asked, his voice tightening. Julia, we never agreed to this. You didn't ask to use the house. You've been living there rent-free, running up the bills, and I'm not okay with it. Well, we're family, she said, her tone sweet but dismissive. And like I said, you're hardly ever here. What's the big deal? The audacity. I could feel the rage bubbling up inside me. This wasn't just a mistake, it was blatant disrespect. She was treating my vacation house like it was a free-for-all, and now she was trying to justify it. Julia, this is our property, Adam said, his voice cold now. We need you to leave. I don't think that's necessary, Julia shot back, her tone sharpening. You know how hard things have been for me lately. I need this place. You're acting like I've done something wrong, but I haven't. I'm just taking advantage of an opportunity. The nerve of her. I was done. Adam, we have to do something about this. I don't care if she's family. This isn't right. I thought about it long and hard, but in the end, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let this go any longer. Julia had crossed the line, and my in-laws, who I thought would understand, were enabling her behavior. It was time for me to stand up for myself. I made a decision to take control of the situation, starting with the utilities. I went ahead and made the necessary adjustments to the accounts, ensuring that the bills were put back in my name. That way, I'd have the power to manage everything on my own terms. I wasn't going to let Julia run up the bills without consequence. Then, I called my in-laws. We need to talk about Julia, I said, trying to stay calm but failing to mask the frustration in my voice. She's been living in our vacation house without our permission. And now she's running up the utility bills like it's nothing. There was silence on the other end. I could feel the weight of the moment. She's family, my mother-in-law said, finally. You shouldn't be so upset about it. She's going through a tough time. Don't make a big deal out of this. I felt my blood pressure rise. She's using us. She's treating our house like it's her own, and you're just enabling it. Monica, you need to understand, my father-in-law chimed in. Julia needs help. This is just temporary. Temporary? I echoed, my voice growing louder. She's been living there rent-free for over a week, and you're telling me this is temporary? No, this ends now. They didn't respond. My frustration was building to a boiling point. Tell Julia to pack her things and leave, I said firmly. This is our house, not hers. As the days wore on, I could feel the tension mounting. Adam and I had been patient, hoping Julia would recognize the line she had crossed and leave on her own. But after multiple conversations and a few empty promises, it became clear she wasn't going anywhere. Every time I brought up the idea of her vacating the house, she brushed it off, acting as though I was the unreasonable one. It was as if I were asking for something absurd, like asking her to leave her own home. But it wasn't her home. It was ours. And I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. We arrived at the vacation house that afternoon, a place that had once been my sanctuary, only to find Julia sitting on the couch, just like the last time. The only difference was that this time, there was an air of defiance about her. She was no longer pretending to be unaware of my growing frustration. No, today, she seemed almost smug. Adam was the first to speak, trying to remain calm, but his voice carried the weight of his frustration. "Julia, we need to talk." She didn't look up immediately. She was flipping through a magazine, her posture casual. She acted as if this was just another day. Finally, she glanced up at Adam with a smile that made my blood boil. "What's the issue now?" "I thought we were all good." "We're not good," Adam said firmly, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You need to leave." Julia raised an eyebrow. "Leave? Why?" "I'm just staying here for a while." "You guys don't use it anyway." I could feel my frustration bubbling over. How could she be so blasé about this? "This is not your house, Julia. You didn't ask. You didn't even inform us. We never gave you permission. You need to leave now." She put the magazine down slowly and stood up. "You can't just kick me out. I'm family, Monica. And you're being ridiculous. We're not causing any harm here." My heart started racing. It was becoming clear that Julia had no intention of leaving. Her sense of entitlement was reaching new heights, and I wasn't going to stand for it. "You've been here for almost 2 weeks, Julia. You've used up all the utilities, and you've taken advantage of us. Enough is enough." But her smile didn't falter. "You can't tell me what to do. You're overreacting. I'm not leaving. This house isn't just yours, it's part of the family. And I need it right now." Adam stepped forward, his voice sharp. "No, Julia. We've asked you repeatedly to leave. This is not your home, and it's not going to become your home by default just because you've overstayed your welcome." I had had enough. My voice broke through the tension like a sudden thunderclap. "Julia, you are trespassing. You don't get to do this anymore. We've given you every chance to do the right thing, but you've ignored us. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." Her face twisted in shock, but that quickly turned to anger. "You wouldn't dare," she spat, her tone venomous. "You're threatening to call the police on your own family? For what?" "Exactly, for trespassing," I said, the words coming out cold and firm. "You have no right to be here. You've overstayed your welcome, and now you're refusing to leave. That's trespassing, Julia." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she might back down. But instead, she crossed her arms and sneered. "Go ahead, then. Call the police. Let them deal with this. But I'm not going anywhere." I could feel the weight of her words. She wasn't just refusing to leave, she was challenging me, daring me to take action. The audacity, the pure arrogance, it was more than I could bear. "Fine," I said, pulling out my phone. "I will call the police." I dialed the number, my fingers trembling slightly with anger. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen next, but as I spoke to the operator, explaining that someone was unlawfully occupying my property and refusing to leave, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was done being passive. This wasn't just a matter of my vacation house, it was about setting a precedent. I wasn't going to let Julia walk all over me any longer. "Stay here," I told Adam, my voice still steady, but filled with determination. "I'm doing this. It's the only way she'll understand." When the police arrived, I could sense the shift in the air. They were professional, calm, and unflinching. They asked Julia to step outside to discuss the situation, but she refused, remaining seated on the couch with that same smug expression. "Ma'am, we need you to leave the premises." one of the officers said, his tone polite but firm. Julia shot up from her seat, her expression transforming into one of disbelief. "You're kicking me out too? On what grounds?" "On the grounds of trespassing. You have been asked to leave several times, and you have refused. At this point, it's no longer a personal dispute. It's a legal matter," the officer explained. Her defiance was starting to crack. But she wasn't ready to give up just yet. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice rising. "This is my family's house." The officer's expression didn't change. "It's not your house, ma'am. You are trespassing, and if you do not leave voluntarily, we will have no choice but to remove you." At that moment, something shifted in Julia. The arrogance that had been so evident in her earlier demeanor faltered. But instead of backing down, she tried one last plea. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said, her voice suddenly softer, more desperate. I could see the act beginning to unravel, but I wasn't moved. "That's not my problem," I replied. "You made the choice to move in without permission. Now you have to face the consequences." The officers remained calm, waiting for her response. Julia hesitated, glancing between us and the officers. I could see the wheels turning in her mind. For a moment, I thought she might give in and leave. But instead, she stood up with a huff, gathering her things. Her pride wouldn't allow her to admit defeat, but the reality was clear. She was losing. "Fine," she muttered. "I'll leave. But don't think this is over, Monica. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did." I wasn't concerned about her threats. I had taken back control of my life and my property. If she wanted to make things difficult, she could. But I wasn't backing down anymore. As she stormed out, the officers exchanged looks and turned to me. "Ma'am, we recommend you change the locks on your doors immediately. This situation could have escalated, but you handled it well." I nodded, relieved that it was finally over. I had drawn a line in the sand, and Julia had crossed it. No more being a doormat. No more being used. The house was mine, and from now on, I would protect it, no matter who it was. The aftermath of everything hit me harder than I had anticipated. After Julia was forced to leave the vacation house, there was an unsettling silence that followed. I thought things would settle down after the police were involved, but what I hadn't expected was the emotional toll it would take on me, especially in terms of my relationship with my in-laws. The following afternoon, I sat on the couch in the living room, replaying everything in my head. The conversation with the police, Julia's defiance, and the utter disbelief that had clouded my mind while I confronted her in my own home. I had felt empowered, yes, but now that it was over, a sense of loneliness crept in. Julia was family, my husband's sister. But there was something even more unsettling than the intrusion of my home. It was the complicity of my in-laws. The phone rang, breaking my reverie. I glanced at the screen. It was my mom. I felt a tightening in my chest, a mix of dread and resignation. My in-laws, as expected, had sided with Julia. They'd always let her get away with things, and I feared that they would see this situation as an overreaction on my part. But it was time to face them, to have this conversation that had been looming over me for so long. I answered the phone with a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Monica, sweetheart, we need to talk." My mom-in-law voice came through, calm but with an edge of something I couldn't quite place. "About Julia, of course." I braced myself, but I couldn't hold back the frustration. "We've had enough," I said, trying to stay composed. "Julia went too far. She broke into our vacation house and refused to leave, and when I asked her to leave, she acted like I was the one in the wrong. She was living there rent-free without even asking." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I know," my mother-in-law said softly, but it wasn't an apology. It was more like a realization. "But she's family, Monica. She needs a place to stay, and we thought it would be okay. You know how things have been for her lately." I couldn't contain the hurt that crept into my voice. You didn't ask us. You just assumed I'd be okay with it, without even talking to us first. I trusted you to respect my boundaries, and instead, you sided with Julia without a second thought. I understand you feel hurt, Monica. But we didn't see it that way. You have to understand, she's family, too, my mother-in-law replied. And we thought she could stay there for a while. We didn't think it would cause any problems. You didn't think it would cause any problems? I repeated, my voice rising. It was our house. We have every right to decide who stays there, and I didn't want her living there. I didn't even know she was there until I started noticing high utility bills. But you didn't care, did you? You never asked me how I felt about it. You just assumed I would be okay with it because she's family. The words hung in the air, thick with emotion. She had no defense. But even so, I could feel her disappointment seeping through the phone. The fallout with my in-laws was more than I had expected. In the following days, I couldn't escape the constant feeling of disappointment that hung over me. I had always prided myself on my ability to keep the peace, to maintain the family bonds. But now I realized that those bonds had been strained, maybe even broken beyond repair. Julia's actions had forced my hand, but it was the response of my in-laws that truly made me question everything. I sat in the quiet of the vacation house, now completely my own again, and reflected on everything that had happened. Julia was gone, and the house was mine once more. But the emotional cost had been high. It wasn't just the utilities or the money that had been stolen from me, it was the trust, the respect that I had given to my family, only to have it trampled on.